Those of you who follow this topic closely, you know that the city of Davis, that's where UC Davis is, it's in the Central Valley, in between the Bay Area and Sacramento, right on I-80. The city council there voted at the beginning of this month, October, 4-1 against a proposal to begin adding fluoride to the public water system there. There are several Monterey County communities, I believe, that are in the same boat that have chosen not
to fluoridate the water.
Now, the city where I live, San Luis Obispo, does add fluoride to the water. I checked it ahead of time. To my dismay, I was like, "Oh, I wish they did." And after I started learning the facts, and somebody who can give us some of those facts is Alan Pryor. He's with Davis Citizens Against Water Fluoridation. Alan is the guy who spearheaded the charge against adding fluoride to the water there in Davis and was successful. Hey, Alan, welcome to the program.
Good morning.
Yeah, nice to have you here. You know, one of the really interesting things, Alan, that I found when researching this topic is that one of the more conservative council members, if I understand it correctly, you can feel free to jump in if I don't have this right, but Bob Dunning praised your work on getting this done, and you guys are typically adversaries, if I understand. Yeah. But he actually wrote a piece in the the Davis Enterprise, saying, you know what, Alan had this topic right, and so you have people from both sides, from the conservative side and from the more liberal side, both coming together and saying water fluoridation is not right now. Why is that?
Well, I think it is one of those cases that reaches across political boundaries. In our efforts here to educate the community, and it really was a very strong educational effort, we focused on the scientific facts of the matter, the efficacy of fluoridation, the adverse health effects, the environmental impacts, and the social justice impact of fluoridation. And by focusing on hard facts, whereas the proponents of fluoridation really kind of use scare tactics, quite honestly, to paint the specter of a horrible caries rates among young disadvantaged children, and we agree with that. It is completely unacceptable.
Caries is another term for cavities?
That's correct.
Okay.
C-A-R-I-E-S. And that aspect was true. But in our research, which was very extensively documented to the community, and we happen to live, fortunately, in a community that's very well educated with a lot of people associated with the university, they relied on those facts to ultimately make their decision and press their case with the city council. So at one point, the city council, when they announced why they were going to not allow fluoridation, they claimed that they were getting letters 6-1 against fluoridation from the local citizens.
Wow.
So, and this coalition that we developed, as I said, crossed political boundaries. There were a lot of progressive, environmental-oriented folks. The local Sierra Club Yolanda group came out against it after our lobbying. We had a lot of the typical old-line progressives here in Davis that were adamant against it, and we also had a lot of the conservatives and the libertarian folks who opposed the putting in a chemical into their drinking water that basically forced them to ingest it if they wanted to drink city water.
So, Alan, do you think that this is an awareness issue? My mom probably would have been considered a hippie, and when we grew up in the 70s, she wouldn't let us have fluoride, and she was positive that there were all of these really bad side effects. And a lot of other parents thought, okay, your mom's a little crazy. But when my kids were growing up and drinking bottled water, which was the big thing when, my kids now are 16 and 17, our dentist said you really need to start giving them fluoride tablets if you're going to have them drink bottled water with no fluoride in it. So do you think that it's an education issue where people just don't understand fluoride?
Well, it's certainly an education issue where the general populace is mostly unaware of it, but there's been a variety of studies that even show that the dental community themselves are unaware of the primary action of fluoride. We have nothing against fluoride per se. it actually, we think it works wonderfully when it's applied topically to your teeth in the form of toothpaste that you spit out, mouthwashes which you spit out, varnishes that you apply when you go to the dentist. All those are good things for your teeth.
And you only need a little pearl-sized drop of the toothpaste on your brush. You don't need that big swirl that you always see, in the pictures showing the toothpaste on it. Just a little drop on your brush is enough to apply
and in fact, you read the toothpaste tube, but they say if you swallow more than a pea-sized amount of that, call the Poison Control Center.
Right.
So that in itself tells you there's something really wrong with ingesting fluoride. And 20 years later, we've, really, there's been an awful lot of research that points to these adverse health effects. And some of them are proven, some of them are suspected. But the picture that's painted by the research in the past 20 years says that this is not something that's good for living creatures. It's not good for humans to ingest it. It's not good for the environment. It bioaccumulates in a variety of species and has a whole slew of untoward effects on living organisms. Because the problem is functionally fluorine and fluoride, which is the dissolved salt form, it's an enzymatic poison. It interferes with a variety of critical enzyme pathways in the body and disrupts them and can lead to things like a variety of people are hypersensitive to it, can develop rashes, gastric distress, headaches, neurological problems.
Even marks on your teeth if you get too much.
That's called fluorosis. That is it's almost like the canary in the coal mine. 41% of teenagers between 12 and 15 years old in the U.S. have some form of fluorosis. 41%. And it's due entirely to excess fluoride intake during when their teeth are developing and that enamel's forming on it.
Because we're getting it from all sources. I mean, it's in the drinking water, it's in your toothbrush, it's in your the liquid that you're rinsing with, and all sorts of things. And if I understand, Alan, countries where they no longer fluoridate the water in Europe and such, the cavity rates have not risen.
Well, in fact, 98% of Europe does not fluoridate their water. And not only have their cavity rates not risen, but they've come down lockstep with those in the U.S. over the past 40 to 50 years. Caries rates around the world, particularly developed world, used to be much, much higher than they are now. And they've been steadily dropping over the past 50 years as people gain access to more fluoridated tooth care products, better access to dentistry.
Yeah.
And in the U.S., they falsely attributed this decline in caries rates entirely to fluoridation.
Right.
And we're making the case that, gee, this is so wonderful. Look what our caries rates have done, without bothering to look across the ocean and seeing that we're seeing the exact same drop in pattern.
Where they weren't fluoridating the water.
Where they've never fluoridated their water.
Alan, I'm afraid we're out of time. We got to have you back on because there's so much more to talk about. Alan Pryor, Citizens Against Fluoridation. Congratulations on your victory there in Davis.
Thank you much. Have a good day.
All right, back in just a moment with some bicycle tours.
The 2013 Harvest Festival.